Greatness. 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 Bow, bow, bow. Greatness.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Renewing the Mind podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Sanchez. Join with me, as always, my dad, Dr. Raul Sanchez. How you doing, Dad?
I'm feeling amazing. Like back in the day, NDSU, we had a saying, those who stay will play. Those who play will be champions. Once a champion, always a champion. There should be right there, baby. Check it out.
And there's the ring kiss. Hey, on this podcast, we teach you how to renew your perspective, move towards uncertainty, and find what's awesome about that in every situation. And never forget it. We want you to know that there's 2 times to be great: when you feel like it and when you don't.
Yes, sir.
Watching on YouTube, hit that bell, give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel so you get more content as we release it. If you're listening to this podcast, wherever you consume the audio version of the podcast, please leave us a review. It helps us out. Also, share this to someone, tag someone in it, send it off. We're slowly starting to start the process of breaking this up. Shout out to Preston Chase Fowler, who's
brother,
helping us break this down and in more consumable lengths. And that's one of the biggest things that they say for podcasts to get views and for people to hear the message. Not a lot of people can have 20 or 30 minutes to consume it, or on our case, sometimes 45. So they consume it in bite-sized chunks. So that's the future of the Renewing the Mind podcast. Hopefully we can continue to get this out to as many people as possible, because we believe we got a message that hopefully speaks to certain people, and we're pretty real with what we say and how we say it. And I think God's given us a little gift, and with some hard work and some struggles and figuring it out, I think we got a message that I think we're pretty proud of, as I don't even know how many episodes. I think like 58, something like that. 58 episodes in, 60 episodes in, something like that. We should look it up, and we should celebrate like at 75 or something.
Yes, sir.
Do a little party, maybe a drawing or giveaway or something.
Ooh, that sounds really good.
Out of your dollars, your pocket.
We'll talk to Mom.
All right. Hey, on this podcast, we're talking about self-esteem. So
Yes,
we're going to be talking about what that looks like, maybe what we struggle with, how we apply that to our life, where self-esteem come from. I got some things that I jotted down on that, but I'm going to kick it off to you, Dad. Start us off, self-esteem, and then I'm going to cut you off when I want to chime in.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start with a quick story. Like this morning, I just run out of the office quick. I had to get there. I had to send some emails, letters. Like I had just work to do before I start work, kind of. So I get out of the office. Get out of the house quick. I'm in the truck. I'm backing up. It's a 2022. So I got all these sensors always going on. And normally I tend to park toward the outside of the garage, like away from the house. So my right side usually beeping, and this little sensor's going off. So I hop in the truck, music's already blaring, like everything's going. I'm looking to the right, and my sensor's going off, but it already does. So I take a look at this little light thing. My right beeper's going off. So I'm like, dude, chill out. So I'm switching to the left, and I'm still going. And then like, it's going crazy. Like it's never this loud. So I'm like, dude. So I'm looking in the mirror behind me, and I'm trying to go left. And then I hear a crunch, and I'm like, I'm just gonna be real. This is what I said. I said, you got to be freaking kidding me. And then I look over here, and my mirror is just completely hanging, glasses all over. So I roll the window down, and I try to put it back up. Then I cut my hand. That was stupid. And okay, so let's just say 10 years ago, maybe even 8 years ago, I would have been so mad, and I would have probably just drove off mad.
Hypothetically speaking, let's say one of your kids did it with like a white Chevy Venture van and was grounded for like, I don't know, 9 or 10 months.
Bro, I'm just telling you, like it's growing pains. I'm telling you.
Let's just hypothetically say that might have happened.
Hypothetically speaking, you might have been grounded for like a month.
And it wasn't even my fault, because whoever put the trash can back, you put it in my way. Anyways, continue. Hypothetically speaking.
I get it. So okay, so I'm looking at the thing. I cut my hand, and I'm not saying anything negative. I'm not mad. I'm just sitting there, and then Stacy comes out. She was like, "What was that? What was that?" And I just pointed down, and she just kind of looks really sad. She was like, "Honey, honey," and she gets sad. Lindsay comes out. She's like, "Oh my!" She's like screaming. I'm like, "It's okay. Nobody's hurt." I didn't tell her about my hand, because then she would have freaked out. So I'm like, "It's okay. I'll just fix it." And then so Stacy comes up to the window, and she's looking at me, and you can tell she's really concerned, probably because of my past. I normally would just scream like, "I'm fine. Like, get away from me. Like, I didn't ask for your help. Like, what are you doing? Like, I can handle it." And it was just like, all these darts, but I didn't. And she's sitting there. Right. And so Then she pulls away and she's whispering to me, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. She's whispering, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But just in this like loving, like, I'm sorry, honey. Like, why is she sad? Because I did something. So that tells me something about me. Like, is in the past, would I make her feel stupid? Would I say something stupid?
Right.
I know me. And I would, it's basically, it's like push everybody away because I have to freaking handle this. Like, I got it. I'm not stupid. I'm not a baby. I'm not dumb.
I
would
don't
have
need to be coddled.
Yeah, I don't like, oh, you're gonna hug me. That's gonna make the better. Like, okay, so you're gonna give me a hug and a kiss and tell me you love me. Like, that's not gonna fix my mirror. That
Right.
would have been me in the past. But I'm sitting here, and maybe because I don't know, maybe you could say I was in a good mood. But here's what I would tell you: I've been working out 89 days in a row. It's literally changed my brain. Yeah, it always comes back to workout, right?
There it is.
But I'm telling you, my baseline's different. My baseline's different. I still get hot, but I don't get hot as like often. Like I used to just like that would make me
Hot
sweat.
as in angry.
Hot as an angry. That would I would have been pitting out. I would have been dripping sweat from my face, like just way up here. And I'm driving away, and Lindsay came out, and so she heard Stacy saying, "I love you," and she's like, "I love you, Dad." And I just rolled the window. I was like, "I love you, baby." And then I roll the window up and I pull back. Mrs. Weeks is standing here like with her dog, and like she's waving at me, like. And I look at her and I just started laughing, and I was like, "Praise the Lord, I didn't just lose it." Because like you look around, there's like 6 people walking to school. It's like, dude,
Right.
everybody on the block would have heard me lose it.
Start
Okay.
screaming.
Yeah. So then I get to the office and I set up everything. So it's first at the office, whatever. And then I see a text and Stacy says, "Honey, it's okay. We have a lot to be thankful for. Like, if I pray that you can let this go." And she's like coddling me, babying me a little bit. And I'm just like, whoa, man, like, was I really that bad? And so, okay. So here's the idea. Negative self-esteem was old me, which is I drive away mad. I'm an idiot. Like, that's stupid. Why did I do that? And then I have to say, okay, now I got to call Tyler and tell him he's going to make fun of me. What kind of role model am I? My kids are going to know I freaking suck. And it would just been boom, 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 boom. It just been beating me up.
Yep.
But literally I'm driving and laughing. And I just like, it's a mirror. Thank goodness I can afford the truck. Thank God that like, they'll get it fixed. It's not a big deal. And I'm laughing because I'm like, I'm not mad at all. My heart's not even racing. I'm not heating up. And I just went, I work out, but normally it'd be like 3 or 4 days a week and on a pattern, just like that. Some days are 3 days, next week, 4 days, next week, 3 days. I would kind of do that. But I've never just work out every single day like that just because I don't have time. So I forced myself just to see what would happen. I've done it several times before, but it just happened to be here. So now the positive self-esteem thing is there's no negative self-talk. Like literally, I didn't say you're an idiot. Like, what's wrong with you? You're a retard. None of the stuff that I used to say. Now, before you like message me, hey, you shouldn't say those words. I'm telling you, my default mode would play a script, and that script was implemented and programmed by my stepdad. Because when I would mess up, he would just 13 minutes of berating me.
And those are the words he used.
Those are the words he used. And then when I'm like riding my bike and I like slip on the gravel and I scrape my hand, I hear those words like, "You're stupid. What are you doing? You think you could ride a bike? You're trying to be cool." And it's just all this negative impact on me. And without realizing that it's not even my self-talk, because it runs a record, I just move out of the way. Like, oh, that's just the default radio. How many of you hop into a car, like if you rent a car and it's country western or something, and you just go, "Oh, this just is the only station the radio plays." No, you preset and you go like you make it you. But with our self-talk, we don't do that. So there's a difference between negative self-esteem, which I beat myself up, and then the positive self-esteem where I'm like, "Hey, it happens. Like, that's not me. That just happened to me." And that's the key I want you to hang on to. Now, as we push into what I'm going to teach you, I want you to hang on to that silly little idea that, maybe I might be mad when I see the bill coming. I got to go get it fixed. Right. But that's not a big deal. I want you to just hang on to that. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I just want us to get to the point where how do we get there? How do we transition from that negative self-talk, which is probably most of our default, to switching that?
Correct. So, so self-esteem is this. It's the ability to accurately see yourself in an area of performance. So I didn't think, oh, I suck at driving. I didn't think, well, I should lose my license. I never second guessed my performance in driving. Okay. The self-esteem about being a driver, I know I'm a good driver. So that never showed up. But see, self-esteem is to adequately predict my performance in a given area. Okay. Now, everyone is biased. Everybody. No one is not unbiased, as we like to say. Everybody's biased. So when we talk about self-esteem, there's 2 biases. You're either over confident in your self-esteem or you're under confident in your self-esteem. Now, here's what's crazy. The people who are overconfident, they see themselves as better than everybody else.
Yep.
Okay. The people who are underconfident, listen to this, they precisely predict their skills. So, like if we're talking about 0 to 10, any skill, let's just say basketball, and I predict that I'm a 7, and then people test me and like, hey, you're a 7. That's actually people who are underestimators of themselves. So they adequately predict themselves, but here's what happened. They overestimate other people. So if I predict I'm a 7 and I'm actually spot on, I look at Tyler, who's actually a 6, but I predict him to be a 9.
Yeah. Not, okay.
And then I show up and I'm like, Tyler's going to wreck me. So we're warming up. I look over, Tyler's hitting threes. I can hit threes too, but I'm like, he's an 8. What if he plays it to be a 9? What if today's one of those days he's 9.2? Like, I'm done.
Sure.
So that's really crazy, right?
So where do we, how do we see that play out in adults in our life? Like with job interviews and that at the workplace?
So in the workplace, like that's a comparative trap. So you can look at this. It's pretty crazy to me. Like the people who overestimate their self-esteem, they're actually more off. So I want you just to picture, we all know somebody. Picture a dude who puffs his chest, typically a dude, puffs his chest. He'd be like, bro, I'll get you in horseshoes. Oh, you want to play Legos? Bro, I'll beat you in Legos. Then you're like, oh, dude, I can throw down on a steak. Oh, bro, I got you. I beat your steak.
I know a couple of them.
Okay. So those people who overestimate everything, as opposed to just being like, hey, I'm an expert in this and this and this. I mean, you might get me in those other things.
Sure.
But okay, the overestimators have a deeper perception problem. They're off than the people who are underestimators. The underestimators are spot on for them, but they don't know other people. That's where they're not good. So if you're asking, how does this show up? Here's your number one thing. If you practice what you're going after and you adequately measure yourself, set a goal, go get it, set a goal, I can't get it. 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 Call somebody. Hey, man, I'm really in a plateau. Could you help me? All right, now I set it and go get it. That's how you adequately gauge your self-awareness, because your self-awareness is hooked to your self-esteem. If I think I'm great at everything, I'm going to brag at everybody. And then here's what's crazy. When I actually perform and I underperform, that's where self-esteem wrecks that guy. So that lady will be sad for days, because how could I go from a 10 to a 3 and they're super down?
Yep.
And so I want you to understand that in any type of performance, Tyler and I could have an omelet flipping contest and it'll show up.
I'll win.
Okay. So the underestimators, if they lose, yeah, well, I mean, who knows? I mean, I thought Ty would kill me. At least I hung in for a while. So they're not so wrecked when they're wrong, because they're pretty good about themselves. They just overestimated Tyler. So when Tyler beats me, well, I thought I would lose anyways. See that?
Yeah.
So to be clear, an underestimator of self-esteem, they're actually closer to the goal. They don't need as much support or help as somebody who overestimates their self-esteem. Got it?
Yeah. A couple things I thought about, when a couple of my sermons and when I preach, I always talk about the comparison trap, that when you're looking for other people and comparing, you'll always find someone better and you'll always find someone worse. And then when you find someone better, you feel down about yourself. And when you find someone worse, you feel yourself is heightened. You have an like you said, an overestimation of who you are. So it never works to compare, because there's always people better. There's always people worse. You either increase your pride or decrease your self-esteem. The other thing too, I thought about, sometimes we just talk a lot about, I mean, me and you are very much, goal setting, and we kind of go in between like entrepreneurial life and setting up, videography and your coaching and some of those things. Yeah. But I also think, like, let's say you're not in that realm. I think that idea of underestimating who I am and overestimating other people, I think that falls to also, I see that play out in, like, at least my life. Like how I'm as a husband.
Yeah.
I go, oh man, I'm really not that good as a husband. There's a whole bunch of areas I need to work on. I'm super bad. And I think, oh, well, that guy as a husband is doing all these things and flying his wife to, whatever, Cancun. And I took my wife to, Red Robin, or, as a dad, oh man, I wish I could do that as a dad. That's super cool. That dad's way better than me, or, all those things, teacher, pastor, now in the realm of being in the school, I see other teachers' classrooms or what they're doing, or I walk by them and kids in their classroom are listening. And I'm like, dude, kids in mine are bouncing off the walls, Yeah. I think that plays out more than just setting goals. I think that everyday life, am I a good enough wife? Am I good enough mom? Am I good enough son or brother or I think that's a huge part of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's for sure. So like if we take a look one step further, if you ask the question like where does this negative self-esteem come from? Because see, the person who underestimates themselves, right? They feel that pretty quickly. And so I expected Ty to beat me. Maybe he would have creamed me, but because I hung in the game, I'm okay. So they have a little bit of poor self-esteem that kind of just show up at the end, but there's this really big anticipatory anxiety. Like this is going to suck. Ty's going to cream me. He's probably a 9. So they psych themselves out of usually trying. Now, on the opposite side of that, the people who overestimate, they get completely wrecked when they're in the middle of the game or in the middle of an activity or middle of job interviews, and they realize like it didn't go like I thought it would go. They usually will have to bow out. Like they'll come up with an excuse, they create a problem, and then they say I couldn't finish. And the reason is it's easier to say I couldn't make it to that third appointment or that third interview rather than say, hey, I didn't make the job, I didn't get the cut, so I'm not good enough. So why they bail out, now all this negative self-esteem comes. Okay. Sure. So even though they look like they're braggy and hot up front, everybody has negative self-esteem. The question is how much and when does it hit you? Okay. So the question I usually get is like, okay, so where's it come from? Like, I know what you're talking about. I have this negative voice anytime I fail at stuff, and it just haunts me for a few hours. Like, okay, so the number one thing is probably what you think about. It comes from negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is like, if I'm going to have a pity party and then somebody says, oh, are you okay? What can I do for you? You know, can I rub your feet? Can I go buy you an ice cream cone? And this is what I try to tell parents. If somebody's having a bad day, don't go buy them anything. Just sit with them and let them come to you with the idea of what do I need to fix it. If you start saying stuff, these are why people get really, really sad and they go on a shopping spree. They get really, really sad, so they get high. They get really, really sad, so they create a problem or create a fight. Like, that's not good. We train our kids wrongly. So now, where does the negative reinforcement comes from? Like, who would jump in a pity party? Well, number one, angry people. If somebody's angry and you jump in and hear their story and you just start going, yeah, I know that dude. Like, he's a wreck. Yeah, well, okay. So we talk about misery loves company. If you're hanging around angry people, sometimes they get what they want. Like, they scream in a line, everybody moves out of the way, and they get budged to the front. Yeah. Like, think about it, right? So we all hate it. We don't like it. But that angry dude who's not going to wait in line when you're dropping off your parents, typically a jack truck, he just like wants to run people over, and he just pulls up to the front. They're like, okay, he's angry. He's late. Right. So he got what he wanted.
It's never someone in a Prius. Promise.
Exactly. Because they're more chill. So then the other, so the angry negative mood, that one always shows up and they get reinforced. And the other one is like I talked about, like, my negative adult dads who are alcoholics, and they always bring up your negatives. Even if you went for it, we'd say, hey, that was close. Good job for trying. Hey, what can we do differently next time? But they would say like, oh, you're stupid for trying. You actually thought you could make it, like, blah. And then so those things, they hit pretty hard in life. And then the last one that people don't pay attention to is sarcasm. I've seen kids, man, just emotionally wrecked because they have a sarcastic dad, typically, who, when a kid tries something, they're like, oh yeah, like, you were going to actually make an omelet. Like, what were you thinking? Stuff like that. Right. Yep. And then everybody around that family will say, oh, that's just a sarcastic family, or, oh, dad's just sarcastic. Right. What it does is, though, it puts me in the realm of sarcasm. So when Tyler says, hey, Sanchez, you did good, I go, whatever, dude. Like, now I'm mad at him because he made a compliment to me, because I automatically think he's being sarcastic. So it does two things. It wrecks me internally. So now my self-esteem sucks. And then number two is people don't trust me because I'm sarcastic toward them. And I can't trust people because I interpret that they're sarcastic, even if they're not.
Even if they're not, right?
Even if they're not.
One thing I thought about when you talked about, overestimating our ability and then super disappointed. I always say disappointment happens when your expectation and your reality don't line up. And so their expectation is, oh, I'm going to get this easy, an interview process. I'm going to get this easily. When reality doesn't meet that expectation, disappointment happens. So the example I always use is, if you go to McDonald's and pay for $1.29 double cheeseburger and you get that double cheeseburger and you eat it, there's no disappointment, right? It's $1.29 cheeseburger. You go to Red Robin, pay for a $14. I don't know why I keep saying Red Robin, but it's on my head.
Bro, got burger on the brain.
I get you go to Red Robin and get a $14 burger and they bring out a double cheeseburger. You're heated.
Yes.
Right? Because your expectation is, a big burger with whatever you get. And so expectation and reality don't line up. You're disappointed. But if you go to McDonald's, you're not disappointed if you paid $1.29, right? And I think that's a lot of this time, a lot of this self-esteem and a lot of disappointment happens when our expectation, good or bad, doesn't line up with our reality. And then we're left disappointed. And then I think that's when that self-talk starts slipping in. I'm this, I'm that. It's because I'm this. It's because I'm that. We start replaying all of those things in our head.
Yeah. Yeah. Two things. Number one, the last time I was at Red Robin, I usually get that Royal Burger, and I open it up, and it literally is like, did they just serve me a quail egg? Like, it's supposed to be a big old juicy egg, and I'm like, oh, what? It's like a quail. That's like a quail egg, bro. I was like,
it's like the robin eggs, the little blue ones that you can find in your yard.
Oh,
Alex Pick said Red Robin is legit.
For real. That's awesome. Okay, the number two is like, I was laughing right when you said it, because like, bro, did you look at my notes? Like, this is the fifth thing. Like,
you think we should talk before we go on the show together, but we don't.
I know. I should send you
one day we will.
Here's my thing though. I think this is my, okay, I can talk about expectation. Like, I think if I send you the notes, it'll seem scripted, and I don't want it to seem scripted. So like, yeah. Anyways, so number 5, social.
Instead, we just show up here and wing it.
Yeah, social prediction errors. That's in my 5th one. So here's what's really crazy. People who applied to be models, they sign up and they go to this university study. Like, if you ever thought you would be a model, this is just a rating scale thing. Just come, we'll teach you what we're doing.
Did you look this up, or is this personal experience?
Yeah, I got cut and I got wrecked. No, just kidding. No. Yeah, no, it's really cool. But like, so, and then the people like, hey, I want to be a model, but I don't know. So they take a bunch of profile pictures and say, okay, we're going to send them to 300 people, 3 different groups of 100. 100 is going to be strict. 100 is going to be neutral, like they've never done this before. And 100 are going to be pretty positive because they're just trying to apply to be judges. So they're just going to be really helpful. So now you're already predicting, okay, I'm going to have 100 positives, I'm going to have 100 negatives, and I'll probably have some in between, right? And then when they look at the stuff, the group is like, okay, brand new group, and they start getting negatives. That completely wrecks them, because like, wait, this person was positive, but they wrecked me. Why? Like, what did I do wrong? You get what I'm saying? And now on the flip side, if I expected Tyler to be really negative, like, man, he's a tough judge, but wait, he likes me, there's a little uptick on that. Okay. So there is something to be said for expectation error, and it's a social recognition. Like, I expect this from him with no language, no communication. I just expect that. And then when I don't get it, I'm hurt. And that's when people always say, and you'll hear a lot of people, I don't set goals, bro. I don't like expectations. Expectations like the devil. I just take life what it is. But when you see them, they never get off the 0. So they're never happy, really. That's not a good way to live. No. The idea is to understand this: no matter positive or negative, it's always going to ebb and flow. And this is where we talk about feelings. Okay. Your expectation of what should happen is just an expectation. It's going to ebb and flow. And I learned pretty hard, like at NDSU, I'd score, a few touchdowns, like over 100 yards. Like, you go into a meeting room, like, oh, this is going to be legit. And then no one says a word. Like, you score a touchdown, you're just like, hey, good block. Hey, this was a dope. Like, Sanchez just had to run. I'm like, okay, thanks. Right. And then the other days are like, dude, I had 2 fumbles or something. Like, dude, I'm gonna get wrecked. I might get benched. And you get there and it's like, hey, that was a good move. Hey, just hang on to the ball. And you're like, thank you. The dude just saved me. Right. Okay. So here's what I learned. Like, it's never as good as you expect, but on the flip side, it's never as bad as you expect.
Sure.
I get it. It's slightly negative or slightly positive. And once I kind of knew, like, stay toward the middle, that really did help me fight off, what my stepdad used to say to me all the time, because I could stay toward the middle. But that expectation, so it's an expectation versus your physical feedback. Get it? So now if I just expect you to be negative and you didn't say anything, we're neutral. But if I expect you to be negative and then you're actually positive, there's a little uptick in my self-esteem, or a little downtick if it's the opposite. But the most important thing here is, remember, it ebbs and flows like a feeling. And what do we say about feelings? That's 2 times to be great. When you feel like it and when you don't. That's where that comes from.
Yeah. Another follow up with that, and then we'll close this one out. But I just jotted down that also, does it matter if people tell you you're good or not? Right. So where does your self-esteem come from? And you learn that as a pastor really quick, because there'll be some Wednesday nights, or even now Tuesdays after chapel at Siouxland Christian, I'll be feeling like I'm preaching the word and just bringing fire. And I see a kid feeling like he's tracking with me, and I close out the sermon. He comes up to me and I'm waiting for him to tell me something that he was listening to. He was like, "Hey, I got a victory royale in Fortnite last night." I'm like, dude, I just preached for 15 minutes, my heart out, right? Or you get done and they're like, the shadow on your nose looked like you had a booger. I'm like, did you hear
Yeah.
anything I just said, right? So if
Yeah.
you base it on, your success on what people tell you or don't tell you, that's a horrible life to live.
Yes.
And so I learned really quick, especially I listened to this podcast. I was talking about creative people and people that create things, that your worship to God is not the response of people, but it's in the process of creating. So if I'm making a video for the church that's supposed to impact and change lives, my job is not my worship to him is not based on the applause after the video. It's based on my creation for the 9 hours, 10 hours it took for me to make that. Same thing with my sermon. My worship to God is my prep and saying that what I'm supposed to say to the people is concise and as specific and as point as possible. The amount of people that raise their hands, clap, or come up to me after the sermon is not where my self-esteem should come from.
Right.
And if we constantly are living in that life, well, no one told me or no one said anything, or I mean, you're ebb and flowing with the praise of man.
Correct.
Your
Right.
self-esteem can't come from that.
Right. And this is what we try to teach people with goal setting. Like, why would I set a goal if I'm not going to get there? Well, listen, you can set a goal for 10 steps. And let's say you just want to get 1 step per month. 10 months later, you got 2 steps. There's a lot of wins in those 2 steps. There's a lot of things you learned what to do, but mostly what not to do. Right. In my 90-day challenge, it's not about like, hey, dude, can I make the challenge? Like, that's a no brainer. What's interesting is like, how do I know when I want to work out in the morning or work out midday or work out after dinner? Like, what does it do for me? Does it make me not sleep? Does it, all these things? Like, I've learned all these pieces. And like people always say, it's not the destination, it's the journey, right? It's not the win, it's the process. And once you learn that the process is everything, the engagement in the daily habits is everything, that's where all the change is. It's not at the end. Dude, if it was the end, why do so many professional athletes, why do so many professional actors and actresses like literally make an attempt on their life after winning the biggest event of their life? And the reason is because they hold a trophy and say, hey, I thought this was going to change how I feel, change the way how I feel. And it did not.
Right.
Right. It didn't, because it's not the end. It's the journey. If they circle back and take a look at those pieces, that's what makes it so great. So, all right. So now let's talk about the brain. So, because people always ask, okay, what can I do about it? Right. And let me talk about something real quickly. This is called a loss perspective versus a gain perspective. Anytime somebody has news for you and they say, hey, would you like the good news first or bad news first? Right. You always take the good news first because it's a gain perspective. If you hear the good news first, it lessens the hit of the bad news. Okay?
I always take the bad news first.
I know it's not good.
I want to end with the good taste in my mouth.
That's what everybody says, but it doesn't work that way. Like on the studies, especially the medical fields, like they'll take a cancer and they'll tell somebody like, hey, the good news is you have a 10% chance of living. And I've actually helped a lot of people live with that 10%. And then they go into the 90% chance that you're going to die. People don't take that as a 90% hit. They just stay focused on the positive, right? That primary effect, the first thing you hear, is still the biggest in life.
Crazy.
And the opposite's true. If somebody says, hey, unfortunately, there's a 90% chance that this isn't going to be good for you. But on the good news, I've helped people live because there's a 10% chance you're going to make it.
All you're going to hear is a 90.
All you hear is a 90, and that 10% is diminished. So when you hear the small number first, like the positive, there's a huge, huge chance that I'm going to believe that. And belief is everything. So let's go with the positives first. So, okay, the part of the brain, they've actually researched this. It's actually pretty cool. So it's the frontostriatal pathway. So it's kind of like right behind the eyes, and it's connected to the prefrontal cortex. And you'll hear me talk about the prefrontal cortex all day, every day, because that's sequential memory. So like first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and it's prioritization. It's like a task analysis. So can I prioritize which tasks are important? That's a prefrontal cortex. That's what makes us humans instead of animals. So now we have the prefrontal cortex, which is self-knowledge of who I am and how I get stuff done. And then the frontostriatal pathway is how do I feel toward motivating, and how do I feel toward actually the reward? Like, if I get that reward, I mean, is it really going to matter? That's a low self-esteem person. Now, here's what they found out. The fatter that pathway between those two areas, which is left front of forehead and then right middle behind the eyes, there's just like a gravel road, or like, is it a highway, or is it a 4-lane interstate? So the thicker the pathway, the tighter their self-esteem is, which means it doesn't ebb and flow very often. Think
How
about
do you get a bigger path?
that's the course you got to pay me for, bro.
Well, I do.
Just kidding. Yeah. So that's what everybody always says, like, oh, what? And here's the idea. Again,
Don't say it.
We kind of hit on it. We kind of hit on
Don't
it
say
earlier.
it.
No, hold on. We kind of hit on it earlier, but it's not actually if you're successful or not. Like, let's say I work out with Tyler, we go to CrossFit, and like I'm the what do you call, the runt of the group. Like, man, I barely set goals. I just show up. But everyone cheers me on and stuff like that. And here's what the research says. It's not if I could hit big goals. It's not if I'm actually successful in that arena based on people who are successful in that arena. So if a bunch of CrossFitters rate me as like a, what do you want to call it? Like a wannabe or something?
Sure.
That doesn't matter. The fact that I show up and I'm a part of a group, that's actually what matters. So how do you strengthen this connection in the brain? Is I know where I stand. Like, I'm not that great, but because everybody cheers me on, and when I go to lift something, everybody comes around a circle and is like, hey, starts yelling at you. Like, I feel like I'm a part of the group. So what happens is that pathway of, I know I suck, or I know I'm the runt, but I feel like I'm still a member of the team. So the feeling of motivation, the feeling of the reward is higher than my actual skill. I still have very solid self-esteem. Do you understand that? Sure. This is why we try to tell people all the time, look, I don't care if you go to the gym and you walked for 15 minutes. I don't care if you go to the gym and you had a list of 31 things, but you did 3. The fact that you got there, starting to change the brain. So when people say, hey, I just show up, I get it. Show up until you show up and do something. And then all of a sudden you show up and do more than something. And then pretty soon you show up and you're just killing it. And everyone's like, oh, I wish I could be like you. Well, I mean, hey, I started just showing up literally and sitting down. Like, that's what I want you to think about, because it's the positive aspects of the sense of self. Like, I'm developing who I am as a person. Right. And so now when we think about self-esteem, we talk about this time, we talk about adolescence and stuff. I've always let you have whatever hairstyle you wanted, never confronted you about your hairstyle, and the other boys either. And now Valencia. And so and the idea is, if I can let you develop a sense of self, like, hey, you want that just because, and you're like, oh, okay. And you guys do that now with like the girls, like let them wear like cheetah pants and like a rainbow shirt. Like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they wanted to wear, right? They're developing their sense of self. Now, if they don't have any expectations to what people say about them, they'll go and feel amazing because I wanted to wear it. And somebody says, hey, I like your camo. Boom. That's good. I wanted positives. I got positives. Like, I know how to dress. See, it's small little things like this. But instead, think about, like an alcoholic parent. Like, okay, it's like, I'd go out there. You're not going out that way. You represent me, dude. You're embarrassing me. Like, you're an effing embarrassment to this family. Like, what? Camo? Yeah. Camo's an embarrassment to you. Like, bro needs glasses. Okay. Anyways. All right. So then the next piece is brain training. We've talked about brain training. How do you change that brain? How do you fatten that pathway? We've talked about neuroplasticity training, and you can Google neuroplasticity training. I've said this before, but there's a program called Elevate. There's a program called Lumosity. There's a bunch of different programs where you literally memorize through games. I have a program you have to pay for, and I coach you, but that's a different story. But you can get some free ones. You can get some that are super, super cheap. Yep. So neuroplasticity brain training strengthens that pathway between actually what I'm doing and how I feel about what I'm doing. Okay. And so those are the cool things. Now, here's the greatest thing I can teach you. Okay. Pick a task, a simple task. Like when I think about raising the boys, I would do this a lot. Like, I would teach them how to juggle. I would teach them how to take a ping pong paddle and bounce the ball just on one side. And hey, bro, let's see how many you can get. Let's have a competition. Okay, cool. You did 100. Now let's see if you can hit it and then flip the paddle and hit it again. Let's see if you get 100 that way. And so now you're going like this. And then like, hey, can you flip an omelet? Just small little tasks. Like, why? That's stupid. Like, what's that going to do for you? Sure. Here's the idea. Like, what? Why would I try that? I suck at that. I'm not good at that. I've never tried that. Well, then you try it and you keep going. And pretty soon there's a little bit of momentum. And when that's momentum, your brain looks back to where I was, like that self-awareness thing. Like, hey, I'm better than I was. Hey, I've made some progress. And before you know it, I come in the kitchen and Ty's like, hey, Daddy, look, I can flip an omelet. Okay. And it's a small little task. And that's who I am. That's what we do. You can pick it. What does it matter? I know some dads who really like to fish. They take rubber stops, rubber bumpers kind of, and they go off the back deck and they line up like empty 2-liter bottles, and they have their kids cast off the deck and just smoke the bottles because number one, it's hand-eye coordination. It's the task stuff that I've helped them work on. And then they'll say, plus when we're fishing, they're more successful because I can tell them where to hit and they hit it. They're not tank. I'm like, that's perfect. Just take a task, one, not 100, one right. Small thing, and then start developing it. Okay. And don't quit until you hit that goal. Then when you hit the goal, we can set another goal, make it a little bit bigger.
That could be simple things too.
Simple things. And then you
Yep.
go, oh, well, I've already flipped an omelet. I'm pretty good at that. I want to see if I can make a pancake with like bacon inside of it and make it look really good, not like just broken pancake. I'm like, okay, cool. So start that one. Once you get this habit of setting a small goal, you're increasing the idea between my self-knowledge, I've never done that before, and how I feel about performing and getting that thing done. And just simple goal setting like that, small little goals, that increases the self-esteem. So it makes it more sturdy. So it's less fluctuative when things happen. Like it's not going to ebb and flow as much based on one little activity. Okay. And that's the best thing I can teach you is the small little tasks. And then on top of that, brain training. Those are the two ways we manifest that brain to fix itself by actually a fat pathway. Okay.
Yep.
Now, small behaviors. Let's go through these small behaviors. I got 5 brain boosters. Okay. Number 1, you increase your communication in a confident relationship with a friend. So that's like, I can call Tyler and be like, hey, you know, I told you I was going to like go to the golf range and I'm trying to hit a straight ball. Like, I really, really want to quit. Like, do you
It's
have
impossible for you.
do you have any suggestions? Like, I'm in a podcast, like, do you want to come hit with me? So just by reaching out like that, I'm taking away the negative self-esteem of wanting to hide, because 3 things keep me hidden: guilt, shame, and blame. So number 1, I want to increase my communication about my disappointments with somebody I trust who's not going to blast it.
Yep.
Okay. Number 2, a morning routine. And they just talk about one thing that gives you 15 minutes of freedom. Sorry, I feel like I have to cough. 1 minute or 15 minutes of freedom. And they actually use the word self-renewal. So they talk about meditating, music, listen to a part of a podcast, listen to a sermon, reading, relaxing, a warm bath. Excuse me. So 15 minutes of what we would call self-care or recovery time.
Yep.
So that means you have to wake up early and to figure out what that looks like. Okay. Number 3, same thing, but now this is at nighttime, 15 minutes at nighttime where you get some self-calming. One of the things that they talk about that's kind of interesting, I've never done it, is read by a candlelight, because the candlelight by itself is really dimming and it slows everything down. And you can read with that, or
it's that yellow light.
It's the yellow light, and it's just calming to sit by a candlelight. And if you don't want to read, then you actually sit for 15 minutes and just meditate or reflect. Just think about your day. Okay, that was number 3.
So I do that, but I look at used cars and the housing market. Yes or no?
Well, the bad news is it's blue light.
What if I have my blue light turned on, my night shift turned on?
Okay, you got your night shift on, your blue light glasses, then yeah, it wouldn't be that big of a deal.
And I look at the Realtor app, check any houses that I want to buy.
Yeah, as long as you stay calm.
7% interest rate.
Yeah, if it makes you sad, then no.
It does.
Seriously. Yeah, if it makes you sad.
Stuck in this house forever. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Then the next one is to be still. And it just says any time of the day. So in the example they gave was like sit at lunch. And so like, man, if you have 15 minutes to sit still, and this is really hard, but
that's complicated. It's actually
very, very worth it. And here's what I want you to think about. I literally want you to sit down and think about being a kid. And I want you to see the little, and this is a little bit old for older people if you have them, but these little like baby carousels that fly around like in the baby crib. Mobile. And so now I have an arm that kind of comes out over the crib. And I want you just to close your eyes and I want you to sit still. It's best if you have like a pillow behind your neck, set your alarm because some people fall asleep. And actually you just sit there with your thoughts. And what's really cool is if you see your thoughts kind of rotate like on the carousel, the same thought will kind of come back for a few times. And the reason it comes back is because you usually open it. And then it'll flee. And then another thought will come in. And then it'll flee. And another thought will come in and get stuck. And if a thought gets stuck, that tells you which thoughts have a lot of weight to you. Like it always gets you riled up or it gets you to answer it. And the genius is I don't have to answer every thought. Just because I have a thought doesn't mean I have to answer it. Just because I have a thought doesn't mean I have to combat it. Just let it flee. So that's a really cool thing if you can do that for 15 minutes. And that one's pretty addicting, by the way. When people do that, they call it meditation, but I just call it sitting with your thoughts. And what's really cool is that 15 minutes will turn into 30, turn into 45. People really, really like it. Tyler, all my kids make fun of me, but we went up to Vail and I sat by a tree and I tried to get Stacy to do it for 5 minutes.
Don't tell this story.
Stacy couldn't do it for 5 minutes. And I was just like having fun. Like, I was like, what? You're done already? But I have to practice on it just because at
No,
first I was
that's
like,
not why we made fun of you. We made fun of you because we asked you what you thought about, and you said that you thought you were thought about being an eagle soaring high above the mountains and
so
flying around. That's why we made fun of you.
yeah, I had thought bubbles that like looked like clouds, and I had just let them go. And then because I was up on top, I just like my eyes became like a drone, like an eagle, and I was just like cruising around, looking down on top of us. It was really cool. And they're like, "What?
Now that is weird.
Are you? What is that real life?"
Yeah.
But that's one of those things. Okay, I pushed into that because I didn't believe in it. I was like, "What? You're just gonna sit there and let you? There's no way." So years ago, I pushed into it to see what would happen. Okay, and then number 5, and this one's really cool. Commit to positive movement. And so here's the idea. You get a partner and you say, hey, I'm going to get this goal where I'm going to try to juggle. And then you could be the goal like, hey, I'm going to try to ice skate. And we kind of help each other out. Now, it's not an accountability partner because somebody always takes like the boss mode over somebody. And then it puts people like in the shame mode. And like, I'm not going to call Ty because I know he's just going to get on me, even though you hired Tyler to be an accountability coach. It doesn't work.
Right, there feels some guilt there.
You feel some guilt there, and then it keeps you hidden, guilt and shame. Now, this is an accountability thing. It's we're going to commit to both engage in positive movement. It's not a 90-day challenge. It's just we're going to both commit to do it. And we'll decide. We're going to talk every Wednesday, and I'm going to let you know how my week went, and then you're going to tell me how your week went, and we're both going to work really hard at just accepting you. And by accepting you, I'm like, cool, Ty, thanks for sharing. Now, how do you feel about your progress this week? Okay, and then have you thought about how you want to move forward? I'm just reflecting back on you, and the acceptance of not doing anything in a week helps free me from like the expectation, like people are going to be mad at me or I've disappointed Tyler. So they call it it's a commit to positive movement group, but I would call it like an acceptance group.
Okay.
Like, hey, just me and Tyler, we've just engaged in an acceptance activity. We're going to accept each other where they're at. It makes sense. Now, I promise you, just the ability to come clean. It's like therapy. Like I came clean and he didn't judge me. I came clean and he didn't tell me what to do, because the strongest way I can empower you is say, okay, thank you for sharing that. How do you feel about sleeping in every day instead of getting up? And you say, actually, I think I needed it. I don't know if COVID was coming or I was just like allergies, but I feel amazing right now because I just rested 7 days in a row in the morning. I was like, great. That's cool. Okay. Now what's your push for next week? What are you thinking about doing?
What's the next step?
What's your next step? And then that's how we move forward. Okay. All right. The very last thing I want to share is the don'ts. There's only 3 of them. And they say avoid these at all costs if you can. Number 1 is the should-haves, where people wreck themselves in self-esteem is like, I should have done this or I should have done that. Which it's funny because, like, again, back to my mirror thing, I said to Stacy when I talked to her at lunch, I said, you know what? Looking back, reflecting, when I hit this button so my car doesn't stop and turn off like at the stop sign, I don't like that feature. I hit that button to turn off. I said, I must also hit my mirrors. I didn't say I shouldn't have, or just that downplay stuff. So avoid the should haves because that puts a lot of shame on yourself.
Sure.
Number 2, we talked about this earlier, the comparison trap. Don't compare yourself to anybody because somebody's always ahead of you. Somebody's always behind you. And it feels like it's not worth it. I'm not moving. I'm not making any gains. Right. There's no movement. So don't do that. And then the last one is contradicting a compliment. So if I talk to how you doing, Ty, and you're like, oh man, I'm working on this new golf game, I bought a new putter. And I was like, oh, I forgot I talked to, Chilton, and he says you're like dope at putting. And you go, actually, though, I suck. So
accepting the compliment.
If you dismiss a compliment or contradict a compliment, you shame yourself.
Yep.
Just accept it. Like, hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
But people do that because it makes them, it comes across as, or they think it's going to be humble.
Right. But it's not. Number one, it's basically saying, yeah, well, 2 things, right? So you belittle yourself. The other thing is like, wait, you calling Chilton a liar? Like, sure. I'm just telling you what he told me. And you're like, whatever. Like, I'm not actually. Right. You see what I'm saying? It's just awkward for me to sit there and be like, okay.
All right.
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 Yeah. And then here's the third part that happens socially is like, okay, so now I know I can't give Tyler a compliment. Like, I'm not going to share stuff with him. Like, he's just awkward. So now people pull away from you. Yep. People pull away from you. Right. So those are the 3. Avoid the should haves. I should have. Right. Avoid the comparison trap and avoid contradicting a compliment. Accept it for what it is. Got it?
Yep. I got one final thought and then we'll get out of here. At the baseline, so these are all situational self-esteem things that we can do, but I just have a thought that at the baseline of who you are, your self-esteem is based on who your creator is. And so we understand this in every part of the world besides us. Everything that we have has value based on who the creator is, right? So a painting is not based on the material that the paint was made of, the canvas. It's based on who created it. It gets its value. That goes for everything and anything. You think of like Yeezys, they're there because, and they have their value, not because they're created from the best material, but because Kanye West made them. Kanye West has a shoe called out of the Yeezys, they're foam runners. Legit, they're a different designed Croc.
Yeah.
Those things go for $350 where Crocs go for $45. Shout out to Crocs. I've been rocking them since 2005 when they're gardening shoes. Anyways,
the camel ones are dope, bro.
They came, the foam runner has value, not because of the material, but because of the creator. And so we don't understand that though when it's about us. Like if you're created in the image of God and you are his image bearer, the creator of the universe, the one who breathed life into existence and everything we see, and he created you, your value is based on the creator, not the material or who you are or what you can do. So at the baseline of all of this, self-esteem is based on you are a child of God, and it has to start there and then build up from there based on life experiences and all the things we just talked about. But if you don't even have an innate self-esteem that you are created in the image of God and perfectly and wonderfully made, you're going to struggle to do everything we just talked about.
Right. That's correct. Yeah. And to be honest, like look at mom. I always say mom, but my wife, Stacy, Ty's mom, she has very good self-esteem because we'll do like a card game. And if she loses, she still is happy and she'll like, okay, who's ready for dessert? And she'll start breakdancing or doing something in the kitchen. But if we play a game and she beats me, oh Lord, like I gotta go walk the dog or something, like and that's because it's a hit on my self-esteem, right? So I grew up with really poor self-esteem. So like I have to talk myself into like, hey, it's just cards, bro. Like chill out. It's not a big deal. It's just cards. And I come in and I think I'm really good. And I turn around and Stacey's like, I beat you.
Right.
And I'm like, you're lucky you're a girl. Like, and it's like, I'm way past it now, but like, dude, there was so much pain of like, just taking a loss because I wasn't sure of, in that creator standpoint. And if you talk to Stacey, you'd be like, hey, like, you don't really care if you win or you lose. And she's like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. It doesn't affect your day.
I know who I am. And that's really, that's the most solid thing. Cause she knows who she is in Christ. And that's what, when I started dating her and started, getting serious with her, I kept saying like, how come none of this stuff bothers you? And she would just say like, I know who I am. That's what she always say. I know who I am in Christ. And she would say it so flippantly, like, oh, okay. Easy for you to say,
right.
And so I just want you to just pay attention to that. Like that's legit. Like you are who you are because of Christ, because of who you were made in the image of. So that's dope.
Because of your creator.
Because of your creator. Awesome.
Sweet. Hey, on this podcast, we teach you how to renew your perspective, move towards uncertainty, and find what's awesome about that in every situation. And never forget it. There's 2 times to be great.
Yes, sir.
You feel like it. And when you don't, we love y'all. Peace out.
Peace.
I had to realize what's inside of me. For all of the people that lied to me. For all of the people that said I would fall off. Oh, boy, what a time to be alive. I wrote this for everyone, feel like they counted out. You need to look in the mirror and tell yourself it's time to be who I am now. Greatness.